Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this year's annual AIDS event and lecture. I'm speaking to you from the comfortable heat of Lusaka, where the temperature is about 30 degrees, but very bravely you have come out in the cold and possibly the damp of a winter's evening in Dublin to attend this lecture. This is very noble and generous of you, and I thank you for that, and for the way it shows your concern that the horrendous AIDS epidemic should be overcome. It is an especially great pleasure and honour to welcome our two speakers this evening, Sean Mellors from South Africa and Robbie Lawler from Ireland. Very courageously, both are open about the fact that they are living with HIV. So in this field, both can be recognized as experts in a way that is not possible for the majority of us. Sean will be speaking from his more than 25 years international experience with HIV and AIDS, and he is known for his passionate commitment to human rights and social development. While Robbie will be drawing on his HIV sexual health activism, especially among university students, his work in establishing the first peer support group network in Ireland for people living with HIV, and his total rejection of anything that smacks of HIV stigma or discrimination. Clearly, both speakers are singularly well equipped to speak to this evening's topic on HIV prevention and ensuring that the messages and services reach everybody with nobody left behind. Both are critical areas. In the last decade, the global response to HIV has been magnificent, but although there has been real progress in the area of HIV treatment, the battle against AIDS is not yet over. Far from it. In fact, some experts are predicting that the way things are going, the world may see a resurgence of the epidemic, with the number of people living with HIV building up steadily and the number of deaths due to AIDS increasing in many countries. There are many reasons for this. One is the dead weight of complacency, the belief that we have successfully come to grips with the problem and that treatment alone will break the back of this disease. But as the renowned expert Peter Piot has said, we will never treat ourselves out of this epidemic. Another challenge is reduced investments. Massive and ever-increasing resources are needed to address the AIDS epidemic, but in 2015, instead of increasing, these fell. Related to this is the way the HIV infection within the body of an individual builds up resistance to the relatively cheap drugs that are initially used against it and require ever more sophisticated and costly treatment. And lurking behind these disturbing scenarios are two issues that are the principal concern of this evening's gathering: preventing the occurrence of new HIV infections and making sure that the necessary information and services to do so reach everybody in need of them, with nobody left behind. Quite simply, the heart of the matter is that if we can stop new HIV infections, we can stop the disease. But if we do not, then the epidemic will continue to flourish, with the danger that much of the progress against AIDS in the last 2 decades will go into reverse. Worldwide, the peak year for new HIV infections was 1997, with 3.3 million infections occurring that year. And since then, there has been a fast decline down to 2005, when there were 2.5 million new infections. That means that each year since then, 2.5 million people have become newly infected. If all of these new infections were to occur in Ireland, half the country would become infected in a single year, and the entire population in less than 2 years. It doesn't bear thinking about, but that is what we want to change. And while it is bad enough that the number of new infections is not coming down, the challenging fact is that in many countries, the number is actually increasing. In Eastern Europe and Central Asia, for instance, the number of persons newly infected with the disease increased by more than 50% between 2010 and 2015. And in Ireland, the number of people newly diagnosed with HIV in 2015 was more than 30% higher than the number diagnosed in 2014. 498 in 2015 and 377 in 2014. The numbers are not huge, but the costs in terms of human devastation and of financial costs are colossal. So we have got to do something. Merely sustaining the current efforts is not enough. There is urgent need for a vigorous reappraisal of what is going on and for better use of the tools that the world has at its disposal. These tools are many, and our two speakers this evening may say something about them. Their core consists in strategies that promote sexual and drug-injecting practices that carry less risk of HIV transmission. But they also include HIV testing and treatment for everybody who may be infected, so as to reduce the risk of transmission from one person to another. And in the public sphere, they include putting an end to punitive laws, practices, policies, and the hateful stigma to which these give rise. Overlooking even one person in efforts to prevent HIV infection would be a major human tragedy. But it would also be a crime against humanity because of the way it could put an individual and a community at risk of HIV transmission. But the calamitous fact is that the AIDS response has not always taken sufficient account of certain groups whose involvement is critical to its success. Sadly, these groups tend to be virtually blacklisted by society. They experience obnoxious stigma and discrimination, and in many parts of the world, they suffer the injustice of abhorrent laws, policies, and practices. I am talking here about such salient populations as men who have sex with men, sex workers and their clients, transgender people, people who inject drugs, and prisoners. These groups are key to HIV prevention efforts because globally they account for more than 1/3 of all new HIV infections. Reaching out to them and involving them in a non-paternalistic way is crucial to every effort to stem the transmission of HIV. Yet often they are ignored or overlooked or are not involved in a way that respects their human dignity. Tragically, for themselves and for the world, they are too often left behind. These are among the matters that Sean and Robbie will be addressing this evening. They are sobering topics, but ones that both speakers are exceptionally well equipped to deal with. I feel sure that from the depth of their experience, they will motivate you very strongly to want to see Ireland do more in the struggle to reduce HIV transmission and to ensure that nobody is left behind. And so with these few introductory remarks, I wish all of you a very fruitful, challenging and thought-provoking evening. And when it is over, may each one of you travel safely back to your homes. And I wish every one of you a very happy and blessed Christmas with your loved ones, and a new year that would see stronger and more consistent focus on HIV prevention and nobody left behind. Thank you, and may God bless all of you.